Hi, everybody. I'm Kirstie, and I'm the president of Stay at Gaybors Agency.
And I am Todd, and I'm the president of Gaybors Agency and Gaybors Spaces and Studios.
Yes, so we're super excited to go over what we do at Gaybors Agency, how we work with brands, properties, and destinations all around the world, and with influencers as well. So do you want to give a little breakdown on what we do at Agency?
Sure, and I'll give a little bit of background so I have context how I ended up on this stage. So, like I said, my name is Todd Murray. I've been doing LGBTQ marketing, well, forever, long before it was even cool, I guess, to do this kind of marketing. I got my start at the United Nations, specifically working with a campaign called Does HIV Look Like Me? And it was a campaign that expanded all around the globe. So I worked in South Africa, I worked in Mexico, I worked in Norway, and then that work then led me to work with content creators all over the place. So Gaybors Agency is the largest agency for LGBTQ creators on the planet. We now have 1,400 creators who come from all over the place. So I'm really proud and honored to run the agency, but that's a little bit of my background.
Yeah, thank you. And then I actually started as a content creator myself. So my partner and I run an award-winning platform called On Airplane Mode, where thank you, where we've partnered with destinations and properties around the world to bring more awareness about safe travel for our community, because in over 70 countries still today, it's still criminalized to be even considered gay, and even more countries around the world, there's still a lot of hate and a lot of not much acceptance and awareness. So we're really looking to work with destinations to help them bring on that content, that awareness, and also provide safe destinations for our community. So I started at Gaybors Agency. Todd tells me I was one of the original Gaybors, but I think he tells everyone that.
Everyone.
So I'll pretend like, yes, okay, I'm one of the original Gaybors, but we actually started with him in 2019 when we were traveling, and he brought me on the agency side. But about last year, I reached out to him about, taking on a travel program where I would love to, work with properties and destinations directly, and get them connected with our LGBTQ influencers in our network. And as he said, we have over 1,500 now in our network. So it's just amazing to see that grow. We then connect those Gaybors to the properties and destinations where they can go and create content, share with their followers where they can go and be a part of this community. And then it also helps the property become more aware and inclusive from anywhere from pronouns in the reservations or, bed preferences. Because I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a property with my partner and we're split up, because they automatically assume we're friends, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we're working with properties to make them more inclusive as well. So I'm really excited to watch the Stay program grow, and we're looking forward to doing more with the destinations as well.
And we did have a panel planned for today, and I apologize, I'm a little bit nervous. I think 2 years of being away from humans during COVID, officially did me in. I was I'm so used to working in a small office, and unless I have to exchange conversations with humans for events, I'm very still in my own bubble. So I apologize if I'm nervous. This is the first time I've spoken.
Well, I think this is opposite of Zoom, right?
We're so used to I was so Zoom good now. In Zoom, no pants Zoom, and all of a sudden I'm God, I have to wear pants and a shirt. So this is intense, but I'm suddenly realizing oh my God, we're now back on stage and speaking. So I apologize if I'm mumbling or nervous, but welcome back to real life, I guess.
Yes.
So we did have a panel planned for today. Unfortunately, our two other panelists, because of the world and flights and whatever, could not make it. So we pivoted ours to have a little bit of a fireside conversation. Like Kirstie said, she not only manages the Stay program, but is, well, I won't say it, but one of my favorite, but I said it, content creators. And then, my perspective is really running the agency. So I work with destinations and brands and content creators from the backside in terms of, that sounded wrong, but from every angle. So we offer really a full 360 perspective when it comes to content creators, right? So whether it's creating the content or signing the contracts or establishing the deliverables, within that exchange, Kirstie and I cover all 360. So we decided to write a few questions. I have questions for Kirstie from the perspective of a creator, and Kirstie has questions for me from the side of running an agency and working with destinations or brands. So we'll just kind of go back and forth, and then I know there's some time for Q&As or at least a fireside chat. So Kirstie, should I ask you first?
Yeah, let's go for it.
No pressure at all. So with that opening, after 3 years of being a travel content creator, what advice would you give give to travel content creators who are just getting started?
Yeah, it's amazing. So I think travel is such a unique niche, right? Because you have a lot of creators in beauty and like fashion and luxury, but I think travel is so unique because it's bringing you an opportunity to create content while you're in different destinations, different properties, all over the world, which is amazing. And you're also helping different communities along the way. So I think with travel creators just starting out, it's important to do the research and then also work with amazing destinations and tourism boards like yourself, because y'all are the experts, right? So we love to partner up with our travel creators in our program and bring them to you, where we can also create amazing itineraries for your community that you can use then for future travelers as well in the community.
Perfect. And then when you're booked for a destination, what goes into the planning? And what are some do's and don'ts that a destination can keep in mind when planning an itinerary or booking travel creators?
Absolutely. Well, I think, specifically LGBTQ travel, creators, I think there's so many amazing LGBTQ-owned businesses, restaurants, coffee shops all around the world. And I think that's something, I've learned on a personal level with traveling with my partner is we just actually did a trip with Visit Kansas, and we went to a beautiful LGBTQ-owned dining experience in Kansas in the woods, and it was just amazing. But these are some of the things that you might not necessarily see on any blog and everywhere, but there's so many great ways that destinations can bring in more LGBTQ-owned businesses and work with the creators to share those and put them on their platform, which will only generate more awareness for our community in the long run too.
Right, and it's probably good to also mention or say that not all of us or many LGBTQ people didn't grow up in a Miami or LA or a major market. And so, I grew up in Salem, Oregon, which is like a small town. So sometimes those smaller travel destination contents, it's nostalgic, right? Because I would assume that my community, where I had to leave high school because of bullying when I came out, would never host LGBTQ creators. So there's power in different markets, whether it's a big market where you know that LA is accepting and welcoming, where a place like Kansas may come with certain stereotypes. And so me seeing that opened my eyes in terms of opportunities.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
And just because, a destination or a city might have harmful laws or legislature, it doesn't mean that there aren't queer people who live there, right? So it's so important to continue bringing in and empowering those voices, even if it could be a little more intimidating or scary. And I think that's why how we continue to move more towards a more positive change and more positive world too for our community too.
Perfect. Amen. Is there a moment or experience in your content creation, because you've been all over the world, right, that really stands out, whether it's bad or good, in terms of your experience as a creator?
I think that's the reason why I really wanted to start the Stay program anyways, because, my partner in On Airplane Mode, we have had those experiences where we've gone to destinations and properties and we've unfortunately, they just didn't have the correct narrative or the right resources to make us feel included. And it doesn't mean that that's not what their intention was. It just means that there's never been an opportunity for them to get that information and be as inclusive as possible. So I think that's why I'm so excited to be a part of this Stay program, where I'm working directly with the properties, directly with the destinations, and helping us bring more information across. Because let's be honest, it's a little intimidating talking about pronouns and how to not offend people or how to make people feel accepted. But unless we have those, serious conversations, it's really hard to break through that, that little intimidation a little bit. But I think that's what, why working for Gaybors Agency and working with Stay program, which is the only opportunity to connect with LGBTQ creators on a large scale, we always say, honestly, you can't type in #gay and find amazing creators easily, right? You have to really do your research, and we do that already for you. We do the vetting, we do the branding, we make sure it's safe and good content too. So I think that's an amazing part about Stay is, building that.
Right, and this is really a question for you guys. How many of you guys are on TikTok in terms of destination? And how many want to be on TikTok? Okay, maybe a few, not many. Okay, well, I know that for TikTok, it is a challenge for many brands, right? It's such a short piece of content. You have to figure out the algorithm. You have to figure out the message, the reasons for the content. So I wanted to ask you specifically, as a travel content creator, you now have 500,000 or close to on TikTok. So what has been your priorities or your commitment with growing your content on different platforms, and what can destinations do, right? Or any brand to look at different platforms like TikTok or YouTube or other places they aren't currently working.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Instagram was this beautifully aesthetic, platform where you put pictures on there and everything has to match and it's all got to be beautiful and it's perfect. But the amazing thing about TikTok is people can go on there and truly be themselves and show, miniature vlogs instead of 20-minute YouTubes, but it's like you have miniature vlogs which really give a very unique and authentic experience during, different destinations. But I've realized as a content creator too that not many destinations have a TikTok handle, or they might not have enough content to keep that going. But a lot of TikTokers are finding their way through, Instagram's really hard to tap into now, but a lot of creators are coming up through the TikTok platform. We're noticing a lot of Gaybors where that is their primary. And I've asked a lot of different destinations we've worked for, do you have a TikTok? How can we integrate that? But the amazing thing is, you don't have to do one or the other. You can do cross-platform too. So you have Instagram posts, but you also have Reels that you can put on TikTok. And it only brings people from different platforms together and showcases your destination even more.
Perfect. And you talked a little bit about stay, but maybe expanding on your hopes for stay or kind of what you hope comes from that program.
Absolutely. I think we're really looking to continue building stay from the property and destination side. So we've worked with different tourism boards in the past with Kansas, we've worked with Kentucky, we've done Aruba as well, and there's just so many different ways that we can continue bringing these LGBTQ creators to your city. And I would love to chat more with you about that if you have any questions afterwards too, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how much, there's room to grow and more places in the world where we can be more accepting for our community.
Perfect.
All right, are you ready?
Yeah, okay, we're ready.
All right, so what makes me your favorite person? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
That was not approved on the questions. Hold on a second.
No, that's my first and second and third question, so I'm putting you on the spot. Okay, so what did you do prior to Gaybors Agency, and what led you to want to start the first ever LGBTQ agency in the world?
Sure, it's a big story, but I'll make it short. I touched on it a little bit ago. I found out what content creation was a long time ago. I was living in Oregon, grew up in Oregon, and actually found out I was HIV positive from my very first partner. And so I was already unapologetic. I was already loud. And when you have a diagnosis 20 years ago and you mix those elements, you're really unapologetic and really loud. And so I started kind of screaming from the rooftops, probably after being left on a few dates at the table, right after disclosing my status. And then that story 20 years ago was not making the news the way it was. And so I ended up getting a lot of opportunities from disclosing my status very publicly, and I worked for MTV. And then in the People magazine issue where Jennifer Lopez is unveiling her twins, on the very next page it says the new face of HIV. And then was my giant head. I was could they have made my head any smaller? It was literally the size of the page. But
You're look, Mom, I made it.
Yeah, but that wasn't the way I thought I would make it, right? I come from a super conservative Mormon family. And suddenly I was I didn't necessarily ask for that title, but I also felt obligated to be a voice of change. But the attention was almost overnight, and MySpace had just come out, and I was working for the network, and all of a sudden we were receiving death threats, and there wasn't a lot of, the word troll wasn't really used, and so my experience with content creation very early on was really negative. And I just remember walking home in New York City and looking behind my shoulder and being afraid, and all this positive change that I was hoping would come from being public, right? And there was no word called a content creator. And I remember sitting around during a meeting and someone saying well, I guess you're a content creator. And I'm what? I've never even heard of that, right? But so I have this very personal experience with the negative sides of content creation where my story, my life, my commitment to live my truth in public suddenly became dangerous and harmful and hurtful. And so I leveraged that experience and I stepped away. I lived two different lives. I lived that life as a content creator where I was incredibly scared as a human and I was trying to figure out a new identity in a world, to understanding the power of content, right? Because my life changed overnight, in some ways for the worse, but in other ways for the best, because I no longer had to disclose ever on a date, which is lovely.
Yeah.
I was so happy I never had to do that again. But then I also understood the power of content.
Well, I know too, you had also mentioned to me in the past that you've worked with brands and you were okay, this is amazing, I love this campaign. what about the gay community? And they're like, yeah, sure, we have a list of 2 gay guys and a lesbian couple. Choose who you want to work with. And he's like, we have so many amazing and eclectic, beautiful creators in our community. Why do we not have more options? And that's, you mentioned that to me, and I think that's amazing too.
Yeah, really, that work led to opening Gaybors Agency after working for the United Nations for a long time. And so I wanted an agency that created opportunities not for just a segment of our community, but for all of our community. And I also had heard around the table 100 times, like, your community is too much of a risk or liability. And now today, to sit in some of those same board meetings or sit with those same brands and hear, like, your community is now an asset. But that's a testament of how content can drive decisions and brands and destinations in 20 years, where we went from a liability or a risk to an asset, which is really a testament and just another reason to celebrate Pride, right? It's really quite amazing.
Yeah. That's amazing. And real quick, I wanted to show you on the screen too. So on the right-hand side, you have content creators in our Gaybors network. These are from the stays that we've been on in that stay program. But on the left-hand side, what I'm going to bring up next is our brand new Gaybors Spaces, which we just opened in LA. And I'll let Todd bring more information on that. But Todd, do you want to talk more about Gaybors Spaces and what you see coming from the space?
Sure. So just a little, like Kirstie said, it's up on the screen, on the right. Or your left. So just, when we had started the agency, it was obviously, shortly before COVID, at least the current form of the agency. And I'm a big believer that we all deserve spaces, right? It's why I think Pulse, which my hometown was so traumatizing for us all, is that we have so few spaces that feel safe, that when that incident happened, we were all like traumatized because the one place we could go, which when that point was often gay bars, was suddenly unsafe. And so it felt like, well, now where do we go? And so that moment and that experience was pivotal for me, like it was for everyone else. And so when we had started the agency during COVID, we really wanted to build a space. And I have worked at WeWorks, I have worked at 100 million co-working spaces, and I just found that I was always trying to fit in. And I think for all of us who are LGBTQ, every day feels like the first day of high school, right? Which is like, right, will I fit in? Will people accept me? How much do I tell in the kitchen over a cup of coffee, right? Do I talk about my weekend with my partner? And so Gaybors Spaces was built by a really amazing team of LGBTQ people who believed in it. It's a 7,000 square foot space on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. It includes co-working space, studios. We had the Diesel Pride party. I actually went straight from that party last night to a plane here. So I may still it's not much sleep yet, but it's really, in essence, an opportunity for a community to never have to apologize or justify or feel like they fit in because other people have to fit in. And that's like a really lovely concept that none of us, or maybe most of us other than gay bars, have ever felt. And so Gaybors Spaces is open. We now have a wait list of LGBTQ businesses who are looking for office space. And our hope is that we expand to Gayborhoods all across the country. So if you are a destination looking to open a Gaybors Spaces because you believe that this community deserves and needs a safe space where they can just be present, that's the hope for this space, is that we find them all over the world in Gayborhoods for creators.
And it's amazing too with the studio spaces. This is a great way for us to bring in that content creation again, right? Because we have photography studios, we have videography studios, we have the rental equipment where it might not be that accessible for a lot of people in our community, but having it easily accessible, and you're also put around so many amazing other creators. You're driving that creativity. It's just amazing to be seeing so many different people in our community come together and create friendships. And then also, with it being such a big event space and probably one of the biggest event spaces in West Hollywood, it's just incredible too that we're working with different brands, like you mentioned Diesel, but we're actually in the talks with a couple of different destinations and hosting different destination events as well at the party, at the event space. So it's just so many opportunities to be more involved in our community too.
Yeah, and we do have studio sponsorship. One of the things that we are really committed to do in opening was having sponsors, studio sponsored. We know that the playing field is not always even, right? Like, we work with contracts every day, all day. Like, white gay men typically get more money in contracts from brands than a Black trans creator. And it goes back to like equality and diversity always looks good on paper, but sometimes is not well executed, right? Sometimes those with the smallest platform or biggest need get the least opportunities. And so all of our studios, which we're announcing this month, will be sponsored so that if you are any human who needs to use a studio but don't have the financial resources to rent equipment or rent the studio, we wanted to remove every barrier because we believe that every voice, every story, every piece of content has a place in this world. And so, you know, it would be opposite of our intention to create a barrier for those opportunities. But we are doing like Puerto Rico loves Gaybors, and we transformed the whole space into a Puerto Rican inspired experience, and invite all of our Gaybors to come. But I'm just proud of so many humans coming together, and I didn't even know how to build a bookshelf from IKEA. Like
You still
that
know
was
how to build a
horrible. Yeah,
bookshelf
I'm
from
really
IKEA.
bad at
Don't
that
play.
stuff.
I did all the building.
Yeah,
I was just kidding.
There were many nights we all just kind of either laid on the floor, watched YouTube videos, and like either cried or drank because of the decision. But like now that it's open, it's really
it's
pretty
really
amazing.
special. Yeah, and I know that we're running out of time now. Do we want to ask some questions do you have any questions for us as well?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to go?
Yeah, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I think it's great because not only are we providing, with the space particularly, we're providing all of these opportunities for them to learn content creation. We're having them learn the workshops. We're taking on the time to teach them better camera skills, better editing skills. There's different ways that we're actually helping these Gaybors build their personal brands and businesses to where when they go to destinations, they'll be more prepared in helping you create better content, which only returns the revenue and the ROI of why you want to work with that creator per se too. So it's like, as Todd was mentioning before, there's a lot of creators in our industry who have never had the opportunity to really reach their potential due to financial hardships or maybe the way where they were come from. So this is where they can come and learn, and we are every step of the way, we're there to help them grow. And then that way when they come to your destination, they're fully prepared and ready, and they have us as an agency be there to help them, if they have any questions as well. So it's just a great way to continue meeting other creators who are just building their businesses too.
Yeah, I also think a return is about trust, right? We work a lot with brands, and we say like, ultimately, if I was on the other side of the coin and I was a marketing director at a brand, I would want to hire people that their followers trust them, right? Because like some creators just buy every campaign deal, right? They're on these like platforms, and so suddenly like by the end of the week they've had 50 deals, and by the end of that week you don't trust anything they say because they're suddenly hawking off so many products that like you become desensitized to that trust factor. So a big part of our work is to remind brands that like the biggest thing you can do is to come out and establish who you are as a human, and then to do that publicly, and to know that a DM feature exists so any human can give you any thoughts at any time is such a dangerous tool. And so like for us working with destination or brands, we always remind them that like that level of trust is so incredible between those followers and that creator, because they have learned, many of them attribute their own coming out story to the creators they follow. So, sometimes we ask brands or destinations not to look at it as a buy of content, but you're buying trust. And there's no other ROI than a human who has 500,000 or even 10,000 humans who trust them because they leaned on them for their own coming out story. So that's like a good way to look at ROI from a creator standpoint.
It's actually a little more of a shout out. So on airplane mode, if you don't follow them, they're like it's one of my favorite.
Oh, thank you.
Instagram, TikTok platforms. I aspire to. No, I'm kidding. You can travel for me. I have no interest traveling all over the world. But
you can just come with us.
Right. We'll bring you back to Florida more often so we can wave rainbow flags here.
Amazing. Yes.
And then it's funny because I was just talking to my video editor about doing something like this, like in our St. Pete area. So when you guys want to expand Gaybors to Florida,
yes, well, definitely. Thank you for that, and I think that's definitely the goal. I mean, I think if it's not New York next, it's somewhere in Florida.
When we do murals at all of our Gaybors spaces, we hire all LGBTQ, whether it's cleaning staff or videographers, all of our muralists. So I think we already know that like Florida will say gay. on our
Yeah.
murals at every single Gayber Spaces. We're like very ready for those murals.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
You can see the mural up at the on the space as well. In the back, it says Gaybors Spaces. Andrew is an incredible muralist, and I'm really looking forward to expanding. I feel like this is just the beginning for Gaybors Agency, Gaybors Spaces, and the travel as well. I think we're really relying on you as well to bring in more LGBTQ awareness at your destinations and providing more safe travel for our community too.
And the concept is something.
Thank you.
Is it your concept? Did you mimic another of the same? Talk a little bit about that.
With Stay?
Yeah.
Actually, well, it all came from my experience, really. So I know that y'all had kind of got the idea with properties, but because I've had so much, experience working with Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton's, any brand and all across the world, I was able to take my personal experiences and ways that I didn't feel accepted or safe, and then also ways that I did feel accepting and safe, and put those together and working directly with marketing teams, with HR teams, PR companies, things like that, to really hone in on how we can make each property the same. And I know that a lot of times the properties look at me and they go, well, how do you know we're LGBTQ friendly? And I'm like, how do you know you're LGBTQ friendly? You wouldn't be on this call with me if you didn't want to be more inclusive, right? But the thing is it's hard to find, there's no other platform like Stay, which is providing that opportunity for you to actually take those steps in becoming more inclusive. So before, you kind of just had to wing it and then hopefully bring in one creator a year. But now you can actually do it on a monthly basis. You can bring in, on the destination side, we're able to help you put in press trips and things like that, to where you can make it not even just during Pride Month, but all year round. That's really what we're wanting to do, is share that your destination or property is inclusive all year round. So.
And those are all vetted by you, correct?
Yes, yes. So we do all vetting beforehand to be in the network. Do you want to talk about the vetting process for all the Gaybors?
Yeah, it's a little bit fluid.
Yeah.
we don't have a Bible that we go by per se in vetting. It kind of goes back to what I said about different creators need different opportunities. So our minimum typically is 10,000 followers, and that is about 99% of our network. But we do look at different things in terms of content quality, approaches, but we also look at needs within the community, right? If there's a trans creator who doesn't maybe have the best content, that is by no means a barrier for entry into our network, because we actually want to work with them to build up their content. Yeah. But we also need brands or destinations to give them that opportunity, right? You're just not going to get the same kind of content, but sometimes like those followers are even more powerful, 10,000 versus 100,000, because they're so attached to that content creator. So we don't have a standard protocol.
Staying on that for a second, and this is what I was thinking when you were talking. This goes back to what Tom Roth was saying about creating content being specific to each of the letters in LGBTQ. I mean, what is your recommendation when a destination comes to you and says, how do we turn this on, and how much should we devote to each letter, right?
Yeah, and I think there's no real answer for that, right? It's supposed to be authentic. I don't think that you can check a certain amount of letters and be like, yeah, we're now inclusive, right? I think the amazing thing about working with our creators is we have lesbian, we have bi, we have trans, we also have non-binary, we have everything under the umbrella. So it's coming less down, as we really want to break down that stigma of it being like we have to get 2 lesbians a year, or 2 black trans creators a year, because at that point it becomes less authentic, right, and less genuine. So bringing creators like some of the ones you see here to the properties and having them create content at the properties, and you're less worried about how they identify as a person, but more who they are as a person and the story that they tell, because eventually you're really reaching a wide audience, because maybe they identify as lesbian, but I know we have gay and trans people who follow me on my predominantly lesbian platform. So there's so many different people that you reach by working with all types of creators in the queer community.
It's probably also looking at who you don't work with, right? Yeah. So if you look at your history of content creators and you keep on going back to the same kind, maybe it's time to diversify your portfolio. And it's also good to ask the creators you're bringing to a destination, like, what do they want to do? Sometimes I'm amazed, because I'm like, they'll send these itineraries and I think like, oh, do they want to do any of this stuff? Like, you get better content creation if a creator enjoys their experience, because it reads more authentic. So being a two-way street when you're putting together an itinerary, maybe there's an amazing trans center in your community, and there's something really powerful about that creator adding that stop to their agenda, because you can imagine the content creation that would come from someplace they feel at home. right? So I think it's like creating a two-way street and asking them what food do they like. Is there a trans center? Is there an LGBTQ center? Like maybe they hate heights, right? So like please don't put them like on something high. Like those questions kind of go back to that of like who are you working with and how are you working with?
So we got one more question, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering when you were talking about this spaces that you said you want a place where where you can be who you are and you are with the other people who are LGBTQ plus I think it's interesting because some former years ago we were just like the young generation is against being in safe spaces. They want to really be together with everybody, you know, and allies, and we don't need like LGBTQ plus holidays anymore because we've overcome it. And I think it's very interesting that by now people are again discussing of opening up space, safe properties, also the development. And I mean, this is maybe connected to what our next speaker is going to say, that the conservative developments in the society have really changed the development which was there before, where we said we don't need to be with LGBTQ plus people anymore because everybody's fine with it. So we've overcome it. And that's very interesting.
Thank you. And I think too, like the important part of what you mentioned before is we haven't had a safe space like this because there's never been one to exist, right? Whenever, you know, we consider a safe place before, it's because we always went to nightclubs or bars, but there's never been a place where our community can go and you know, be a place where they can be productive and creative, or a man can go and wear heels and have his nails done and feel himself and wear makeup and truly be empowered in who he is as a person, right? And then also there's, you know, places where they go and work and feel empowered too. So it's less, you know, it's not to be seen as an exclusive place because all people are invited, and LGBTQIA, right? There are allies as well, but we really want to make sure that we're
company could also
Yes.
with like really only allies, they could also be there. But if you have already waiting list, that won't work because there is the necessity
Yes.
obviously for these safe spaces, and that's in a way a step back.
Yeah, I love being with my community.
Yeah.
Like, I have worked at many WeWorks, and I love my community. I love being part of it, and I think the whole world knows that we're tired. We survived Trump. We went through a pandemic. We're like white. We're exhausted. Like, and they're taking advantage of that exhaustion by like pushing through a lot of craziness. And so, you know, when we built the space, my hope was that like you're not necessarily going to feel energized in a bar. You don't feel energized on a hookup app. But like when you come to a space where there's like-minded humans who have like-minded needs for equality and kindness and acceptance, like the conversations that happen over coffee or in our content creation rooms, like that is where social change happens.
Yeah.
But if the spaces don't exist, then that change can never happen. And so the hope was initially that it would be a content creation space, but we started hearing from lawyers and print companies and accountants, and it became clear to us like overnight that like Gaybors Spaces was not just a content creation space. It was so that you could walk through the door and even in the quietness of your moment know that the human sitting across from you was part of your tribe.
Yeah.
And that is like such a powerful thing. So that's my favorite moments is when I see humans just having these small conversations, because I'm like, please go out and kick ass.
Yeah.
Right? Please remind the world how like amazing we are and feel a little bit more inspired to own your truth.
And
because you spent 8 hours around people that reminded you how amazing you are to begin with.
Because it's also like whenever, you know, we have our community places too, but I know for us, like lesbian nights only take place on one night a month, and they usually happen at straight clubs, and it's one night a month. But our community doesn't want to be split up either. You know, I think the amazing part about Gaybors Spaces too is you are seeing everybody under the community umbrella, right, together and around each other. It's not just gay men at a bar. It's literally everybody coming together and creating content, no matter who they are and who they love. So I think that's the important part about it.
Well, Kirstie and Todd, guys, thanks so much for that. That was amazing. It was brand new, and
Thank
I think you did a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.